Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
Michelle, I'm getting nervous. We're getting really close to the election here in the United States. It's only a few weeks away. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's definitely it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be tight, very tight.
Yeah, I mean, there are polls that are coming out every week now, and
I
it's like
know.
flip-flopping back and
Oh,
forth.
I
This
know.
person's in the lead. Here's why this
I
person will
know.
win. Here's why that person will win. The truth is, we have no idea what's going to happen because
Right.
polling is not that accurate. So, but
Oh,
what we
yeah.
can do though, Michelle, is show our listeners how to actually get into the topic of politics and how to know when to step away if someone doesn't agree with us or how to
Mhm.
approach it if they
Right.
don't. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, Lindsay, do you know anyone who has wildly different political views than you?
Kind of. I sort of think some of my in-laws are kind of different than me politically. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so with them, I kind of avoid it.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, that's what we're really gonna be talking about because there's, also hey, Thanksgiving is also coming up. People are gonna
Yeah.
be coming around the table.
Oh,
I'll
Thanksgiving. Wow. That's going to be intense for a lot of families.
Right, right after the election. I feel
Yeah.
like they should have just like election day should not be anywhere near Thanksgiving
I
because then
agree.
it's like
Yeah.
then you're coming all together and who
Mhm.
knows what's gonna happen. But anyway, yeah, exactly. So today we're gonna talk about what do you do in these tough conversations, guys? This is part 4 of our series on politics, really talking about this election that is very contentious, right?
Yes.
We're a very divided country right now, and so we wanted to give you the tools, to give you a little bit of knowledge of what's going on, how to talk about it, what not to say, also at work, what
Yes.
happened. So Lindsay, what are those other episodes that
Yes.
we did?
So 2 or 3 weeks ago in 2284, right here in Allers English, we talked about Democrat versus Republican, how to talk about American politics, where we laid the groundwork for you guys,
Hmm.
all the basic terms that you need to know. Then over
Hmm.
on Business English, which if you're not following it, you should be,
Yes.
321, who are you voting for? Questions to avoid at work. And then last week, Michelle, what
Yep.
did we talk about just a few episodes ago?
Yeah, so this was 2289 was the 3 issues that will decide the US election. So we went over really in depth
Mm-hmm.
several of the main issues and we touched on some others I think
Yeah.
to let you know really what's going on, like what are we voting on here really?
100%. So go and do your homework. Go get caught up, guys. Or you could listen today and go back to those. But hit the follow button so you don't miss any of these very cool series that we are
Yes.
coming up with. And if our listeners want a follow up after the election, let us know on social media or wherever, and we will answer your questions. We'll just have to see what happens here. So,
We sure will. Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So go
So,
ahead,
I mean,
Michelle.
this is what do you do in this situation if someone disagrees with you or even if they're not that close with you, just how do you handle these situations? Because I mean, Lindsay, how do you feel about it? You just said you avoid it.
Well, I not with everyone. So I think you have to weigh your relationship with the people and
Yeah.
decide what's more important because or can you see their point and sort of use the right words to kind of make concessions a little bit and say, I understand where you're coming from. Like you just have to get a sense of your feelings about it. What is going to be the outcome? Is this going to be productive? Are we going to try to
Mhm.
understand each other better or is it going to ruin a relationship?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if in my opinion, if you're close enough to the person, you just have to find a way to mentally separate the person from the
Yeah.
politics.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when politics it feels very much like a team sport right now. And that can
Yeah.
be difficult. Now, some people have opposite views. Some people will end a relationship, end something over these different political views. And it's hard because in some ways it can be tempting, but when it's somebody so close to you, how are you honestly I don't know. What do you think,
Well,
Lindsay?
I've heard a lot of stories lately, just as I've met people over the last year or two who have said they've completely cut off any connection with a brother or like a father-in-law or something over their political views. And I feel like that's something that's kind of new in our country. This
Yeah.
divisiveness. We dropped two really good bonus words for today for our
Oh,
listeners.
yeah. There's been a
Contentious.
lot already. Yep,
Yeah,
contentious.
contentious, great, and divisive. They basically mean the same thing
Yeah.
and super useful this election season. But yeah, I've seen it, Michelle, recently. And I wonder
Yeah.
if it's happening globally. I know there's a lot of strife globally around politics right now. There's a lot of anger, but I don't know because I feel like other countries are better at keeping politics a little bit more intellectual, more like dinner table
Mhm.
conversation, intellectual. We make it kind of an identity politics, but
Yeah,
I'm not
it
sure if
is.
that concept is spreading globally or if it's really just we're taking this to an extreme. Yeah, I don't
Interesting,
know.
because I know there's a lot of this, divisiveness going around the world, but I don't yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know what it's like at the dinner table, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's
in
really
that situation.
interesting. Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, it's interesting. You really have to evaluate how important your relationship is and maybe what are some of the key issues that you disagree on. Maybe there are some that you can come to terms with your differences, but
yeah.
maybe there are some people feel, "Oh, well, I'm fundamentally different from this person." So, I don't know. It's a touchy topic, and it depends on the situation, of course. But I mean, I think also in terms of if you talk about it enough, it depends on the height of your emotions, right? If you're extremely emotional about the decision, I think maybe stay away from it. If you think then it's going to cause crying and yelling and it's just not going to be worth it and you're not going to be able to enjoy yourself, then I think it's okay to say no, we're not going to talk about it. What do you think, Lindsay?
Well, I also think what is your current mental state, right?
Yeah.
So if you've been drinking, for example, then
Yeah.
maybe you might lose it in a way that you could keep your head a little more centered when politics come. Or are you tired? Are you stressed out? Are your kids tugging at you? And like
Right.
just is your patience very short in that moment?
Right.
Maybe it's better to save that conversation for a time when you'll have more patience earlier in the day, a different time of day, right? So that self-awareness is also really key to not losing these relationships, Michelle. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So let's say you don't want to you're not up for it. What's something
Yeah.
you could say?
Okay. So here are the phrases for our listeners, guys. Write these down. We're going to need these actually probably right now, right? So
Yep.
here we go. I'd rather not talk politics right now. And it's just interesting. We're not saying I'd rather not talk about
About
politics right now. You can say that, of course, but
right.
this is a little more slangy, a little more native and natural. I'd rather
Mhm.
not talk X right now. You can put anything there.
Mhm.
Talk sports, talk
Mhm.
news, talk weather. I guess you could say that. It's just a more street language way to say it.
Right, right, very natural sounding. Or we've thrown out this expression before, "Let's agree to disagree."
Yeah.
So that's kind of just a way to kind of, zip up the conversation a little bit. We're just shutting it down at this point.
Yeah, I think we have taught this on another episode and it works well here when you just realize, okay, we're just not gonna I'm not gonna convince you at this point. At this point, there are very few people in the electorate that are convincible, I think. There are still some swing voters, but very few. People are
Mhm.
pretty locked into their positions by now. So the likelihood of you coming over to your in-laws' house and explaining why they should vote for
Right,
Republicans or Democrat, I
right,
mean, no, it's probably not
right.
gonna happen.
Right,
Right?
right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
true, it's true. So or, if you wanna elaborate a little bit, you could say, "We have different viewpoints on this. I'd rather talk about something else."
Yeah. And you can be light about it too, right? You can kind of make a joke. Oh, there's so many more interesting things going on right now, even though the election is probably, you can be a little sarcastic. You don't have to be super heavy about it
Right,
in the way
that's
you
true.
deliver it, right?
Uh,
Um, there,
you
you
could
can,
even sorry,
yeah, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no,
I
go
mean,
ahead,
you
Michelle.
could even say something right, like you said, you could just do a quick joke. You could just be like, "New topic,"
Yeah,
or,
totally.
no, exactly. It doesn't have to be so heavy.
Exactly. Keep it light is my recommendation. Then transition, and we've done a lot of episodes, guys, on All Ears English about how to transition into other topics. So find those episodes. So, Michelle, next piece today. What if you are actually okay? Maybe one of your relatives or friends is a moderate and you can see eye to eye on things
Mm.
a little bit. You're okay to talk about it.
Mhm, right, yeah, you have open ears, you have an open heart, you wanna
Yeah.
hear the other side,
Yeah.
and, hearing the other side could also make you a better communicator, be able to express yourself in a better way and debate, so it's not a bad idea. I mean,
Yeah.
so, Lindsay, after the break, we're gonna talk about what you can say if you wanna talk, but you disagree.
Okay. We'll be right back. Okay. So, Michelle, where do we start here? So, what can we say if we want to talk, but we know that there is some disagreement that's going to come out, but we still want to talk through it and we want to maintain this relationship? Okay.
Mhm. So, you can say, "I understand where you're coming from, but" So,
Mhm.
for example, I understand where you're coming from, but I just think Trump lacks the character and integrity to be president.
Yeah, and again, guys, we're not putting our own,
No,
political views.
we're not.
You can insert Kamala Harris there, you can insert anyone you want, okay?
Yes,
Just fill
exactly.
in the
And
blank.
I have examples from both
Yeah,
sides. Don't you
good,
worry.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, perfect. So then here's another one. Oh, did we wanna okay. I gotta say, I see it completely differently. Dot, dot, dot. So, Michelle, what would that look like here?
I gotta say, I see it completely differently. I think Trump was a strong leader, and I think Kamala Harris will just be a continuation of Biden's policies. So,
Mhm.
see,
Yeah,
we're making it
nice.
equal on both
Yeah, we are.
sides, guys. We're not here to tell you what to think.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to throw out some examples of how what things you actually might hear people say.
Yeah, and I like this phrase, "I see it completely differently." It applies outside politics too. So a lot of what you're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
learn today, guys, you could take when you talk about the latest, I don't know, research study on something, whatever you like to talk about at parties. That is what you could use when you disagree a little bit. So I like that.
Right. Right.
Next one, Michelle, what is it?
It's I'm trying to understand your perspective on X. Why do you think blah blah blah?
Yeah.
So, how
Mhm.
would that sound?
Yeah. I'm trying to understand your perspective on Harris's plan for gun control. Why do you think she would implement a gun
Oh,
buyback plan? Okay.
sorry. I meant why do you think she wouldn't? What or I don't know what I meant here. Wouldn't.
Would or
I don't know.
wouldn't. Either way, it doesn't matter.
We
It's
don't
irrelevant,
yeah, right,
right?
whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
So the point is, I'm trying to understand your perspective on X, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So this is so I like this because you're making a gesture and you're saying, I want to see you. Like I want to fully
Mhm.
see you and see what your concerns are. I want to see how you're seeing this, which is another word for empathy.
Right, exactly. Or we'll do one more. Don't you think X is a concern? Right. So you could say, don't you think Project 2025 is a concern?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So this one's definitely a little more, you know,
You're
yeah.
not necessarily you're really you're just saying you support this side, but aren't you concerned about this, right?
Yeah.
Aren't you concerned about the border? Aren't you concerned about Project 25,
Right.
right? Like there it could be anything.
Yeah, and then if we wanna be even more neutral, we could
Mhm.
say, "Do you think Project X is a concern at all?" Right? So we can step one step back and be even a
Instead
little
of don't
more neutral,
you.
right? And see
Yeah.
because there is a big difference in tone between, "Don't you think X is a
Right.
concern?" or, "Do you think X is a concern at all?" Those are totally different.
Totally different. That's really interesting because don't it's a little bit more like it's a little bit more accusatory.
Exactly. So
So it's a
there
little
are
bit more aggressive.
right, so there are always ways to step back a little bit and think and I think these kind of conversations, especially if you know you're talking to someone who's on the complete other end of the spectrum,
Mhm.
we really want to be self-reflective. What are they going to gather from my words? Are they going to shut down immediately? So what can I do to step back and be a little less aggressive, right? Mhm.
Exactly. Very,
Yeah.
very good point. So, all right. So
Okay,
let's
big
do a
one.
role play. So I'm the Trump supporter here.
Oh man, Michelle. Okay. All right. Well, right. Wow. So Michelle, you're a Trump supporter and I am a
You
Harris
are.
supporter. All right, here we
Yeah.
go. Just taking one for the team.
I'm taking one for the okay, here we go.
All right, here we go.
I hate talking politics.
I know, but well, I understand where you're coming from, but don't you think Kamala Harris is the most qualified person for this position? I think Trump is a threat to democracy.
Don't you think all her flip-flopping is a concern? I feel like I don't know her.
I don't. I'm more concerned about Project 2025 and reproductive rights.
I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think there's any validity to Project 2025. And I still think so many people identify with Trump and his policies.
I gotta say, I see it completely differently. I think he's a menace, and so many Republicans have turned against him.
Okay, I can see we have different viewpoints on this. Let's talk about something else.
Sounds good. Oh, that ended
Okay.
well, I guess. It ended better than I think most of these conversations do tend to end nowadays.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
exactly. But so, and we can like touch on, when we explain the role play, we can go just explain a little bit about these issues and why we're
sure.
saying what we're saying. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, right. So, I think because we used some key phrases, The conversation went longer than I think some of these conversations were. We talked a little bit more about some of the issues. We didn't agree. No one changed their vote, right? No one's going to change their vote at this point. I don't think
True.
really. But let's talk
Yeah.
about what we said. So you said, I hate talking politics. Right?
Yeah.
And then I said, I know, but well, I understand where you're coming from, but don't you think XYZ, right? Don't you think Kamala Harris is the most qualified person for the position? Okay. So I
Mhm.
understand where you're coming from, but
Mhm.
XYZ, that is your phrase for today, guys. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I said, "Don't you think?" Or I could have said, "Do you think?" Right?
Right.
Depending how how I want to sound. So I said, "All her flip flopping is a concern." I feel like I don't know her, and that's something that is a criticism of
Mm-hmm.
Kamala Harris is that she's it seems to have changed a lot of her viewpoints. So
Right.
some people on both like
Yeah. Just
whether
broadly,
you're
it's a
more or
concern. Yeah.
less
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
she was the state attorney general of California, and then she had certain views, and then she was in Congress and had different views, and then was the vice president, and different things happened. So there has been a lot of change actually, and maybe there's an explanation for it, but certainly that is an issue that you might hear. I mean, we're really
right.
getting into the actual issues here. We're not filling anything in the blanks with just false issues in this episode, right? So but one thing, the way we could rephrase that is, do you think her flip flopping is a concern at all?
right.
Right. So that
Yeah.
would be that more neutral way of stepping back, one step back, because again, don't you think is a little bit like you
Like
should think this, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. It's like, how can you it almost seems like how can you not think that?
Yes. And
Right.
again, the term flip flopping, I think this came up in one of the other episodes. We're not talking about shoes here, Michelle, right?
But yes, we're changing your
Yes.
viewpoint a lot. Yep.
Good.
And then I said, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think there's any validity to Project 2025. So
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm saying like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I
Right.
don't think it's valid. Yeah.
Yep, and that's your next phrase. So I understand where you're coming from. So if we haven't written those down yet for our listeners, make sure we're scribbling those down. Good. And then I said, I gotta say, I see it completely differently. Yeah. And
Mhm.
sometimes this is really all that you can say at the end is owning your own perspective and kind of
Yeah.
ending the conversation.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
then instead of, there comes a point where you realize, okay, maybe things could get heated at some point and we don't want that. So I just said, okay, I can see we have different viewpoints on this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something else. And that's fine.
Yeah. So today's episode isn't exactly about building bridges. It's more about maintaining relationships when you know that someone sees things very differently and maybe politics comes up. How do we kind of touch on it and then maybe back out of the topic? Right.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
close to the election, I think, unfortunately, that's probably the majority of what you're going to have. The conversations you're going to hear and see and participate in is going to be like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. But we ended it
Mm.
on a good note. But yeah, so guys, the election is coming up in just a couple weeks, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and so there's a podcast that if anyone is really into politics and wants to listen to a podcast, I personally like the podcast Pod Save America. So it's hosted by the former speechwriters of Obama's former speechwriters. So they have the insider perspective on how to run an election, being in the White House, writing speeches, congressional elections, local elections, and presidential elections. So they really go granular. So if you really want to nerd out on the electoral college and the things we haven't had time to talk about in this
Yeah.
series, then check out Pod Save America. All right. Good.
Awesome. All right, takeaway for today, Lindsay? Any
Well,
last thoughts?
don't lose your relationships. Don't lose
Yeah.
because you're close to these people for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want to be losing a brother, a sister, an in-law.
Yeah.
No, save those relationships, right? We'll as a country, we're going to get through the moment we're in. As a world, we're going to get through it, and you want those people in your life. So use the phrases today. Use your intuition too. If it's time to back out of it, use
Yeah.
these phrases to back out. All right?
Yes.
Good.
Exactly. All right. Woo. Well, this has been a great series, guys. Definitely, if you haven't listened to the other episodes, make sure you take a listen to those because we go through so much for this election. And yeah, we'll see what
Yeah.
happens
Yeah,
soon.
we'll probably do a recap on once the results are out. We'll
I'm
talk
sure.
about what's going on and, what implications and what's happened. So we'll be back to this topic, guys, but let us know if you have any follow-up questions. And Michelle, thanks for wading into the world of politics with us.
Ooh, this was fun. All right. Bye, guys.
All right, take care. Bye.